As we found out, Azita Rafat's story is far from unique. While Afghans certainly acknowledge the phenomenon, families with direct experience are, for the most part, reluctant to speak openly about it, much less appear on camera. Our producer-reporter Jenny Nordberg spent weeks in Afghanistan and is here with us. Well, Jenny, you've reported from Afghanistan a number of times, as have I. I never heard about this in over a dozen trips to Afghanistan over a 15, 20-year period. Didn't hear about it from any diplomats, didn't hear about it from any military people, didn't hear about it from any Afghan officials, didn't hear about it from Afghan friends that I knew fairly well. Had you any hint of this at all before you stumbled across it?
No, none at all. It's a question that you can't think of before you almost have the answer. And once you start asking, it turns out to be true. But no, never. I think, if I may elaborate, that it very much has to do with a country that's been in war for such a long time. And I do get the sense that family life is very private. It's rare that you're invited into a family, and even more rare that people open up and speak about their lives. It's a place where you mind your own business.
Well, now, what about Western relief agencies and NGOs? Were they aware of this? Did they know about it?
Oh, I went to them first. I can't say, but the ones that I spoke to either didn't know what I was talking about or said that it did not exist. So from then on, I just mostly spoke to Afghans, and it turned out that almost every Afghan that I asked had a story of a neighbor or a relative or a colleague or a former schoolmate who had at one point done this.
Well, tell us about some of the other people you found.
Well, there was one story, for instance, about a 10-year-old girl in a very poor neighborhood of Kabul. Her name is Mina. She's in a family of 8 sisters, where she is essentially the family breadwinner, working in a store during the day as a boy, again with a short haircut and traditional Afghan clothing. And as there are only girls in the family, only sisters, this is what the family has decided to do for survival.
And some of the others?
There are children, but I also met a few others, among them Zara, who's 15, and that gets more interesting even because it's a teenager. And when she opened the door to her apartment, to her family's apartment, she was dressed in a suit. And I wasn't even quite sure whether this was a young man or a young woman. It turned out that she had grown up as a boy and had brothers in the family too eventually, but just decided that she didn't want to go back because she does not like to be a girl in Afghanistan because she feels that they're badly treated, and she preferred to stay as disguised as a young man at this point. And her parents are conflicted about it, but they still allow her to do it.
What am I to say, what will you say to those people who say, this is just another case of a small group of people, very small in the great scheme of things development? What do you say to those criticizing?
Well, first of all, we don't know. We don't know how many little girls, how many young women, how many adult women live today as boys, young men, and adult men in Afghanistan. We just don't know that. So whereas we have what we can call anecdotal evidence of this, we don't know what the bigger picture is. But I would disagree also if you told me it wasn't a big deal, because this is a place where we have invested enormous amounts of money and manpower and expertise. All the best experts are trying to figure this country out. And something that goes on just below the surface that has to do with how people live their everyday lives, and you just have to ask yourself, what else are we missing?
Well, bottom line, both as a reporter and as a woman, what's your takeaway on this?
I think that as we first started out discussing this story, as absurd as it is to us, we must remember that this is an extremely different culture, and it does make sense when you think about it, because throughout history, when people have not been able to be who they are, or when you've separated, religions or, men and women and ethnicities, stuff like this tends to happen. You will pass for someone else. Women, American women who enrolled as soldiers in the American Civil War as men, just because they weren't allowed otherwise. African Americans passing for white. Even today, gays passing for straight in the military. You will see it throughout history and in different parts of the world whenever you segregate society in a way that calls for creativity and survival.
Cindy, thank you.